Please help me welcome Loren Norris.
Felt that feeling of winning? You win the prize, you win the race, you win the game, you win the award. And something in you wants to laugh and cry all at the same time. You want to celebrate, you want to woohoo, and you want the whole world to celebrate with you. And that's kind of the feeling that you need to motivate you on to the next thing. Unfortunately, many of us have also experienced the feeling of losing. Which one in you is stronger? That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I've been listening to the science of success from a lot of different ways for a long time. I've listened to John Maxwell and Paul Martinelli and everybody from Daniel Pink to Bruce Lipton to Robert Cialdini. The list goes on and on and on. Tony Robbins and Gary Brecka. And as you listen to them all from the spectrum of neuroscience and the nutrition that we put in our body, and Gary Brecka talks about how a lot of what we treat as depression and anxiety is really a biochemical, physiological problem as much as or more than it's a neurological, psychological problem. In fact, he says we spend a whole lot of time treating psychological ailments with psychological solutions when they're not psychological ailments to begin with. They're actually physiological, they're biomedical, biomechanical problems, a lack of dopamine or an addiction to dopamine. And the challenge that we have is we're trying to solve a problem with math that was made for baking. We're trying to solve a baking problem with engineering math. Or we're trying to solve a cooking problem with swimming pool solutions. If you understand what I mean by that, we're trying to solve a problem with the wrong tool, the wrong methodology, the wrong process. We're not going to get there that way. And I found in my own life that being someone who loves words, I study communication, I study how we can change one word in the midst of a sentence, in the middle of a dialogue, halfway through the paragraph, 1 or 2 pages into a 300-page novel, and in that one word, we change the meaning or the context of everything. We change the emotional center around the meaning of what we're trying to convey. Or we completely disconnect our audience and we speak in big, giant words that they don't understand, or words that have to them a different meaning. I remember talking to an interpreter one day, and he's Spanish from El Salvador, speaks Spanish from El Salvador. His way of speaking Spanish is a little bit different than if you're in Mexico or Guatemala or any of the South American countries, because each of them have their own dialogue, their own idioms, their own axioms. One of the things that he articulated to me that day was, he said, Americans have this way of saying this phrase called pulling your leg. I was just pulling your leg. In today's modern vernacular, that might look like just joking or kidding. And when he said to me, I don't get it, where do you even come up with a phrase like pulling your leg? He said the first time I heard it, the thought that went through my head before I translated it from one language to another was, why would you pull on someone's leg? That doesn't even make sense. Just pulling your leg as a way of saying, I was just kidding, I was just joking, don't take that seriously. Well, that doesn't make any sense either. And so from his experience in life, his comprehension, all of a sudden there's a distance created, a dissonance created, an incongruency between what he's hearing, these words coming out of your mouth, and what you intend to mean by them, and the way he should feel when he hears them, as opposed to what he's actually hearing, what he's actually feeling, and what he's actually thinking. Now, that happens in communication all the time, and I study communicators for the purpose of making sure that I am better at, or at least intentional about, my word choices, so as to avoid confusion in my communication like that. Sometimes I have jokes that are written. I've written funny lines, what I thought was a funny line, into one particular talk that I use all the time. A little vignette that I use on a regular basis. And in that vignette, there's a line that says, we had watermelon and ice cream and cake and aunts. And some uncles too. And that little pause between aunts and uncles is kind of the punchline, because everybody realizes, oh, you were talking about ants like you have around a picnic. Yeah, little crawly things. And no, oh, you meant ants like aunts and uncles. Yeah. And the first time I worked with that presentation and an interpreter, she first said to everybody, ants like the little crawly ones. And then I said, and uncles. And then she looked at me like, oh, I missed that. He meant ants like mujeres. And she tried to re-explain it. What was funny was all the bilingual people in the audience understood that it was a joke. And unfortunately, I made the joke on her. That wasn't my intent. But it kind of panned out, and it made it twice as funny. Everybody in the audience got a second laugh out of it once they understood the punchline as she translated it in Spanish. There's a communication gap that happens inside us as well. And it's not the words necessarily that we speak to everybody around us, while those are very important and they do get caught up in what's going on inside us. But if you've ever had that woohoo when kind of a moment, when everything seems to be going right for you, you want to laugh and cry at the same time, you want to celebrate, it's the same emotional response often as when you see the hero save the day in the movies. You're on the edge of your seat. Everything's going bad. It's all horrible. The music even tells you that. The darkness on the screen even tells you that. Everything in your mind that's telling you, here's what's coming next. It's setting you up for this disaster. And then in comes the hero and it's all wonderful. And you're thinking to yourself, man, that's the way I want my life to be. I want to live on that emotional high, that roller coaster, that win, that award, that trophy, that prize. I want to be there all the time. Don't put me anywhere else. I want to feel like that all the time. Unfortunately, we can't. We would all burn out if we lived like that. Now, there are some people who are very, very positive people. They're very excited about life and everything to them is a win. That's cool. That's awesome. Wish I could be there. I'm not one of those people. I try to manage my attitude and to control my emotions, to not be a Debbie Downer, so to speak. I want to be more positive. I want to live in that winning emotion every day. But I fail to do that sometimes. And here's what happens as a result. As a result of that constant tension, that rise and fall, that good emotion, bad emotion, that today I win and tomorrow I'm not even sure if I want to get out of bed. What happens is I set these goals. And I'm sure it's just me, so you can just observe and laugh, or you can observe and take notes, and maybe you'll feel sorry for me. Maybe you'll recognize somebody else in me and go, yes, so-and-so is just like that. Maybe you'll look in the mirror and be honest with yourself and go, I have those days too. I have these win moments, and I set the goal and I see this objective that I want to accomplish. And when I set that objective, when I write down that goal, I feel a certain kind of way. I feel like, man, if I could actually do that, that would be awesome. And the challenge is sometimes I set that goal, and as I'm writing it, as I'm articulating it, as I'm thinking, if that happened, then all these other things would happen too. If I wrote a new book and it became an international bestseller and I could sell 10 million copies of it, my life would be so radically different. All of the things that I've wanted to do all of my life, they would be possible financially. They would be possible relationally. They would be possible with the notoriety that comes from selling 10 million books. That's a lot of books. And instantly, something deep inside me feels the constant tension of the trickle, not only of my own self-esteem, but the number of times throughout my life that I've heard, you can't do that. You're not capable. You're not competent at that. Who would want to read your books? Why would anybody? Why would 10 million people buy your book? Or why would one person buy 10 million copies of your book? I mean, just give me any excuse for that to be true. Go ahead. I'm waiting. And that negative self-talk isn't just communication. See, this is the point that I'm really driving at, because as I study all these psychologists and neuroscientists and phenomenal leaders and phenomenal communicators from all over the world and all facets of thought and process, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Tony Robbins, Brene Brown, they all talk about this triad of centralization in self. And they don't say it quite that way. It's my own conclusion I'm coming to, but this triad looks like the physiology, the psychology, and the thinking. And the psychology and the thinking are different, because the psychology has more to do with the emotional state. The physiology has to do with the physical state. And the thinking has to do with that verbal communication, the words that we actually use to say those things. And sometimes those words they don't even come out of our mouth. They're silent. They're not uttered for the world to hear, or even our dearest loved ones. They're just in here. And they keep playing over and over again. But here's what they do. Those words have a direct correlation to our emotional center, how we choose to feel about something. I love the way Dr. Caroline Leaf describes an attitude. It's what we think about how we feel, and how we feel about what we think. And the real question is only which one comes first. Did I feel it first and then think through it? Or did I think something and then have an emotional response to it? And to think that those two things happen in a vacuum and that triad doesn't come in, that the physiology doesn't come in, well, that's just wrong. It's true that when you think something and you feel something, your physiology responds to it. Ever had an anxiety attack? Ever thought about being afraid of the dark, and then you get those chills down your spine and suddenly you're looking around in the dark going, what do I not see? And see, all of these aspects kind of come together, and they are part of winning psychology. The emotion that says, I win. What it feels like when you win. Part of that is reactive. There's really nothing you can do about it. It just happens. You win and you're like, yes. Now, if you watch really closely to especially champions who compete at a high level in a one-on-one sport, tennis, chess, debate, doesn't matter. When it's a one-on-one sport and there's not a whole bunch of people to jump up and down and celebrate with, I mean, when you score the touchdown, the rest of the team generally runs to the end of the field and jumps up and down with you, and everybody's celebrating. And that emotional high that comes from that moment redefines that moment, and that's powerful. It sets in stone that relationship between the psychology of the win, the emotion of the win, the way that you celebrate, and all the physiology that goes into it. It becomes something concrete and tangible that you can go back to. But many of us, when we win, I've played in pool tournaments, I've played in chess games. These are one-on-one competitions, speech or debate. These are one-on-one competitions. Generally speaking, when you win, what you don't want to do is be a gloating fool. You don't want to act like a celebratory idiot in a solemn place. You also, a lot of times, are competing against someone you know really well, and you feel just as bad for them losing as you do for you winning. And so it's not like the touchdown. It's not like the volleyball team. It's not like that final home run where the entire team clears the dugout and comes onto the field with you. It's not like that. It's different than that. It's a subdued win. It's the, yes, but you can't tell anybody. You don't scream it out loud. You don't get to physiologically express what it feels like to win like that. And so there's this subdued and almost right on the edge of, I won, but I can't tell anybody. That emotion, that physiology, that thought process, for most of my life, has been so close to the, you don't deserve that. You can't have that. You didn't earn that. You're not good enough for that. It's been so close all of my life that I have to look back and be honest and say, I don't know if I should feel like it's a win, or if I should acknowledge that I got lucky. I don't know if I should feel like this is a win, yay, jump up and down in the end zone, wait for my friends to gather around, or if I should look at it and go, yeah, you got away with one. Because I think that's the emotion that I struggle with the most, is I feel like when there is a win, when I close the sale, when I get the new client, when I finish the book, when I finish the podcast, that win that says you've accomplished something, you've succeeded at something, is immediately followed by but you don't really deserve this. Am I the only one? Anybody else? Bueller? See, the challenge that we all have is when we don't regulate those emotions intentionally, when we don't set our sights on those things that are above, that are next, that are focused forward, then what happens is what we've become most familiar with, the emotion, the physiology, and the linguistics. They hunt us down in the dark. Those feelings of inadequacy that we've allowed to become our custom. Those tensions of, I know the other shoe's going to drop any second. It's all going too good. Surely it's going to go wrong any minute. I've had too many wins in a row and I know failure is coming. It's not just the thought process that looks at the cycles of life and says, everything ebbs and flows. Whether you're talking about your heart rate or your blood sugar, or you're talking about your emotional state, or you're talking about the sunlight or your sleep patterns or the Dow Jones average. Everything fluctuates. Everything is up and down. There is nothing that stays exactly the same. And when we realize that, we sometimes think, well, I'm always going to be fluctuating in a downward pattern. And we allow ourselves to feel that way. And we emotionally get in and stay in that state. And then our language reinforces that state. And again, whether you think about how you feel or feel and then think about it, either way it drives your attitude. And then your attitude begins to drive your behavior, your physiology, your actions, the activity, the things that you engage in. Have you ever been to the gym and you walk up to do that one exercise and the first thing that comes to your mind is, last time I did that thing, it hurt. I don't care if it's the bench press or the leg press or just getting on the bicycle or the rowing machine or doing push-ups or whatever it is. You look at the treadmill and you think, no. Or the Stairmaster. I hate that thing. It hurts my knees, it hurts my hips, it hurts my glutes, it hurts my back. I'm winded after like 10 steps on that thing. What a whipping. Why would I get back on that thing? There is no positive relationship between me and a Stairmaster machine. Zero. If I owned one, it would be a clothes hanger. And yet, the results that I want for my body, a stronger core, stronger legs, better cardio, better endurance, all of the things that I want as results are on the other side of that stupid Stairmaster machine. And so something has to shift. Emotionally, linguistically, I've got to move those two things. I've got to adjust those two dials. What you think about how you feel and how you feel about what you think when I look at that Stairmaster, what I think and feel are not good things. Something's got to give in order for me to desire to get on the Stairmaster. If I want the results that come from being on the Stairmaster for 20 minutes, I got to do something differently. Think about it differently. Feel about it differently. And you know what is most often the driving force? Dr. Cootie proved this. Tony Robbins talks about it all the time. Tony Robbins says that you can think about something phenomenal. You can even project how you're going to feel about that thing. But that emotional state will not stay with you nearly as long as if you partner that with a physical activity. That's why you see him clap when he's doing his events. You see him throw that energy out there. It's bottling it up and harnessing it and sending it out there. It's not just a routine. Oh, it is a routine. In fact, it's a routine to the degree that it's become a habit. And that habit drives a physiological reality in his body that says, this is what we do. Now, I heard in his interview with Jordan Peterson just recently, Tony said, every day I do a cold plunge. I've been doing it since long before Gary Brecka or anybody else started talking about it. I do a cold plunge. Here's something you ought to know. I don't like it. In fact, I hate it. In fact, for years I would stand at the edge of that cold pool and I would think to myself, are you stupid? Why are you doing this? I hate the way it makes my body feel. I hate the way I think about the cold chills that run through my body. My spine feels like it's trying to turn inside. I don't want to do the cold plunge. He said, but for years, and I believe he said 14 years, maybe it's been longer than that. He said, for years, I walk to the edge of that pool and I don't allow myself to think about it, and I don't allow myself to feel the fear, the anxiety, the frustration, or the pain. All those are choices. They're all choices. We get to choose what we think. We get to choose how we feel. We get to choose what we do. And so when that collision comes and that goal is stated and you look at it and you're like, I want to have that. I want to do that. I want to accomplish this. I want to win here. A win would look like fill in the blank. A win would feel like fill in the blank. In order to win, I have to do fill in the blank. When you get that triad in relationship to each other, I think what you're going to find is that the more intentional you are about the physicality associated with that win, the more intentional you are about that, the more likely it is that both the emotion and the thought will follow it. The communication coming out of your mouth and the communication inside your head and the emotions that you feel attached to it, if you'll take the step, do the thing, take the action, move toward the goal, you may not feel like it when you get to the edge of the cold water pool. You may stand there thinking, this is going to be miserable. Yes, it is, probably. I mean, if we're being honest, you're not going to like this. No, probably not. No more than I like the Stairmaster. It's going to hurt. This is going to suck. Yeah, probably. And that's why 3% of the people in the world experience the success they desire. 3. Because 97% of people think about how they feel and they feel a certain kind of way and then think through that. And as they think through how they feel or they feel what they think about, they stop. They find themselves in the quit cycle very, very quickly. And if you haven't watched the podcast on the quit cycle, go back and find that one. I don't care if you're on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can find Leading Leaders Podcast on all those platforms. Go back and find the two that go together, the quit cycle and the 5 hours of motivation. And if you'll invest in those, along with this podcast, you'll find some little secrets that I'm discovering and still practicing in my own life that will change the way you go about your day. Nike said, just do it. They didn't say what to do or how it would benefit you. But I'd be willing to bet that at some place in your life, some strategic opportunity in your life, there's a wall of trepidation where you feel like, I really want this win. And you think to yourself, I really don't deserve this win. And so then you're feeling and you're thinking or in conflict with each other and you can't get them off the starting line. And I'm going to tell you, just like me with the treadmill or the Stairmaster, just like Tony with his cold water plunge, just like anybody who's thinking to themselves, I haven't been off this couch in months, it all begins with the first next step. Do it. Is it going to suck? Probably. Is it going to be miserable? Yeah. Are you going to feel like a failure long before you feel like a winner? Of course you are. Of course you are. But at some point, you've just got to do the miserable thing that gets you moving toward the win that you desire. You've got to realize that how you feel about the potential of losing will be overwhelmed by how you feel when you actually win. True story. You've got to realize that the thinking that brought you here will not take you there. You've got to change that thinking. You've got to aggressively do that. And nothing will change your thinking faster than feeling the win, getting the thing, the trophy, the car, the job, the mate, the house, whatever it is that you're after, that new level of faith. Are you reading the things that build your faith? Are you going to places where your faith is tested and challenged? Are you doing the part of the journey that sucks to get to the part of the journey that you desire? John Maxwell's idiom comes up all the time. People approach him and they say, I want to do what you do. All they see is the win. And he says, are you willing to do what I did so that I can do what I do? Because this overnight success in your eyes took 25 years to build. No Olympian started yesterday. I look in the mirror and I realize I got some more pounds to lose. I've got some work to do on my disciplines and my thinking and my processes and my commitment to study. I've got work to do in all of those areas. And I can either bemoan the fact that that work is so hard and it takes so much time and there's so many distractions and there's so much other drama in my life. I can either whine about that or I can get busy doing it. Chances are I will never feel the win of success. I will never taste the accomplishments. I will never achieve the goals if all I do is think about how I felt as a failure in the past. If all I do is feel those recurring nightmares of people saying, but you can't, you're not worthy, you're not capable, you're not competent, you don't have the right education, you don't have the right degree, you're not big enough, you're not strong enough, you're not fast enough. See, if every Olympian in the world had succumbed to those thoughts, those quotes, those feelings of negativity and not enough, if they'd stayed in the cycle of quit or only focused on the feeling of failure, they would have never been Olympians. They most certainly would have never been gold medal winners. Winning that gold medal, that's an enormous accomplishment. Making it to the Olympics, that's an enormous accomplishment. Getting out of pee-wee football or baseball or volleyball, getting off the pre-K soccer team and onto something bigger, that's an accomplishment. We've got to learn to thrive on what it feels like emotionally and physiologically to win. And if Dr. Cootie is right, sometimes, long before you actually win, long before you actually see that goal line even, long before you feel like I'm on top of the world, you've got to do what being on top of the world looks like. Dr. Cootie says, take on that Wonder Woman stance. Put your feet firm on the ground. Put your chest out, your back straight, your hands on your hips. Open yourself up to the physiology of success. And your emotions and your thinking, your linguistics will follow. Oh, they all got to work together. That takes a lot of discipline. You got to start somewhere, though. Start with doing what it looks like to succeed. Start with doing what it looks like to win. Let the feelings and the linguistics follow that. If you wait till you can afford it, it'll never happen. If you wait until you feel it, it'll never happen. If you wait till you can articulate it clearly to yourself and others, it will never happen. It only begins to happen when you begin to do it. So begin to do it. Let the feelings and the articulation follow. Or you should have a plan. Start crafting something. But when the first to do on that list comes up, do it. Don't argue with yourself. Don't fight through it. Don't wait till it feels better. Do it. That's my advice to you. That's my advice to me. I'm taking it. I'm doing it. Even now at this stage of my life, I realize that maybe I got 20, 25 years left. If I do the right things, maybe I can make that 30 or 40 years left. But none of those things will happen to me unless I do the right thing, even when I don't feel like it. That's my challenge to you. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I encourage you to go to storypoweracademy.com and check it out. Look at the different classes, the different levels, the different things that are available. You can take a lot of them a la carte. But spend some time there and see if that's the kind of thing that would change the way you communicate as a leader, as a pastor, as a counselor, as a political leader. And if that will help you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, only 10 people in the Elite Speakers. You will have to apply for that. But if you're a candidate, I'd love to have that conversation with you. I'm Loren Norris with Story Power Academy. I look forward to seeing you inside.